2:111 and 2:112. This kind of solidifies our views. It's interesting because we always bring 262 and 569, right? And Rashad really emphasized them, but I haven't focused on these two verses, 2:111. And it just says, all believers are redeemed regardless of the name of their religion. And so it emphasizes that, in 112, those who submit themselves absolutely to God alone will lead a righteous life, receive their recompense from their Lord. They have nothing to fear, nor will they grieve. That's just, emphasizing the unity of submitting.
I have a question
I
actually.
Please go ahead, ask your question.
Yeah, so my question was on 114, where it says, those ought not to enter therein except fearfully. So, how do you guys see that part of the verse?
I'll give a 2 cents. It's interesting, we can't scheme against God's system and assume that we're going to get away with it. Um, Anytime that we're committing sin, and we think that it's like, oh, well, that's fine. God won't punish me for this, or I'm justified in this. Really, we're tricking ourselves, and especially when it comes to the houses of God, that if we think that in essence we're not supportive, or we're not helping or contributing, that in essence it's like we can get away with it. It's really failing to understand God's system. It's like people who say, for instance, if you decide, hey, I'm not going to work or study, and I'm just going to be a lazy couch potato, and God's going to, provide for me. I think in essence is trying to, these are just ways that individuals try to abuse God's system. Um, so, someone who's contributing to the desertion and the boycotting of God's masjids, where His name alone is commemorated, it's only to their own detriment.
So, are you saying that they're fearing God, right? Or because it seems like I think this verse has been used before in I think some people say like they should fear like the people inside that masjid, right? I'm not quite sure what it means.
Oh, so you're asking specifically, these ought not to enter therein except fearfully.
Yeah, exactly.
I think, and people kind of know who they are, right? When I'm talking about the individual who commits these acts. I don't think the fearfully is from the people. I think, the punishment is always from God. I think God tells us to be patient, that, we're allowed to inflict like an equitable retribution, but if we leave it to God, God provides the most exemplary punishments. But it's kind of that human tendency. We want to stick it to someone. We want to, show them up, that to show their hypocrisy or their disbelief. But I think personally, yeah, the fear isn't from the people. I think, if anyone is God conscious, their fear would be of the retribution brought upon them from God.
I would add to that also that in fact they would love to see you there. They want you to validate their beliefs. So if you come there, it would be a victory for them. It's actually, and so the fearfulness is just your own guilt, your own awareness that, oh, God's not going to be happy with me. That's how I see it too. But I was going to also comment on omniscient in 2:115, and God is omnipresent. God is omnipresent, and it's one of those things where it's explained that God is here, but by remote control. That he's physically out there, but he's aware of every single thing. And if somebody would like to go further with that, that would be awesome.
Can I just comment on what the question that was asked? So, sorry, I was just occupied for a moment. So basically, the first part is very clear, 2:114. It says, you shall frequent the masjid, right? So who are more evil than those who boycott God's masjid where his name is commemorated and contribute to their desertion? These ought not to enter therein except fearfully. So the question is, are they feared of God or the fear of the people? And I think God is saying that they should fear God for what they're doing. But my understanding is some people think that this means they should fear the people, so the people should be so threatening and hostile that they are scared to enter the masjid in those conditions. And I just don't think that's accurate.
Yeah, so I think this verse is used for, you know, like for hypocrites and kind of like enemies of God. So like people say, you know, you have to be harsh and stern with them, right? So this is where like those kind of people will come in because they're evil, right? They're trying to like boycott God's masjids, and yeah, you should be like harsh and stern with them in that regard. But I mean, yeah, I do think you guys are probably correct on that. Like you should like fear God, like not people. Thank you.
I wanted to add another comment to this. Is, you know, the word masjid, we associate it with you know, Muslim and Islam, but it simply means a place of prostration, meaning that any building, any place, any congregation that's devoted to God alone, you know, we should be in a support of in that sense, because at the end of the day, in 652, it says, "Do not dismiss those who worship their Lord day and night, devoted completely to Him alone. If you dismiss them, you will be a transgressor." You think about, you know, how many times, like, it's funny, where I live, I looked into opening up like a physical masjid, and the amount of hoops that they make you jump through. You have to spend 50 grand. At least this was as of a couple years ago, uh, in order to just get the surveys done to see if they will let you proceed with having a masjid. And this isn't even building a masjid. This is just like occupying a commercial space for the sake of a masjid. And to me, it's like when I see these hurdles that they put forth, it's kind of I know that there's a good portion of the population that if they hear the word masjid, their connotations or understandings of what that means is they just want it to not be within vicinity of them. They want it to be shut down. And I think it's beyond just, you know, people who are hypocrites or self-identify, that this is a general warning as well. I have another comment regarding the previous verses 111 and 112. In 112, it reads, "Indeed, those who submit themselves absolutely to God alone while leading a righteous life will receive their recompense from the Lord. They have nothing to fear, nor will they grieve." And this is the book of James in the Bible. It says, "Submit yourselves." This is chapter 4. From the beginning, it's really, I think, profound, but I'm going to just start from verse 7. It says, "Submit yourselves then to God, resist the devil, and he will flee from you. Come near to God, and he will come near to you. Wash your hands, you sinners, and purify your hearts, you double-minded. Grieve, mourn, and wail. Change your laughter to mourning and your joy to gloom. Humble yourselves before the Lord, and he will lift you up." I think that you know, this is a universal principle. The word Israel, for instance, it means wrestling with God. You know, these are people who are conflicted, and the whole concept of all these religions, these Abrahamic religions, these monotheistic religions, is the absolute submission to God alone. And then once we submit, what's interesting is the word Islam. It's a multi-meaning. One meaning is submit, the other means peace. And the aspect is what comes first, peace or submission. And you know, we see from this that it's like first you submit, and once you submit, God grants us peace. And this is just the system. Then you look like individuals, they want to associate these names that they gave to the religion, Jews, Christians, like these terms didn't even exist um, when the prophets who came preaching these messages. Like, you know, Moses himself didn't identify as a Jew. Um, these are terms in essence that was like ascribed to them post facto to kind of differentiate themselves. And there's always that tendency of wanting to, you know, each time God sends a new revelation to people, that they want to say, "Oh, we're different than everyone else. We're unique," and find some way to justify that.
Praise God, yeah. And to tie with your point as well, I just wanted to read 121. "Those who receive the scripture and know it as it should be known will believe in this. As for those who disbelieve, they are the losers." So it doesn't matter if you call yourself, Christian or a Jew, right? If you have come across like the Quran, you have to believe it. And I think there's this kind of misconception. Just taking like for example 112. Indeed, those who submit themselves absolutely to God alone while leading a righteous life will receive their recompense from their Lord. But if there is a Christian or a Jew that is doing that, they also need to believe in the Quran, right? They can't simply say, well, I'm already leading a righteous life, I already believe in God alone, and then reject the scripture. So yeah, I just wanted to add that point as well.
So, Salam, so does leading a righteous life include like salat and everything as well?
Say that again.
It says, what does it say? While leading a righteous life will receive, like, the righteous life, does that include salat and zakat and like everything? Basically what it says in the Quran to do.
Yeah, so from my understanding, it does mean that, but there's also a verse for this. So Surah 2:117. So it says, righteousness defined. Righteousness is not turning your faces towards the east or the west. Righteous are those who believe in God, the last day, the angels, the scripture, and the prophets, and they give the money cheerfully to the relatives, the orphans, the needy, the traveling alien, the beggars, and to free the slaves. And they observe the contact prayers, and they give the obligatory charity, and they keep their word whenever they make a promise, and they steadfastly persevere in the face of persecution, hardship, and war. These are the truthful, these are the righteous. Yeah, so for your question, yeah, it does include zakat and salah and all of the above.
Can I say
I'll just post that for Aisha.
can I say something? If you solve the Quran and don't pray, then this is not a righteous life. But if you didn't solve the Quran and you just believe only one God and hereafter and angels, etc., then you don't pray because you didn't solve the Quran yet. Then yes, you can be submitter without praying if you didn't solve the Quran. But if you saw the Quran and read it, like read the full of it, and saw praying things, etc., then yes, you have to do it.
So, like, I hear often that submitters can be from any religion. What does that mean? Like, there can be like Hindu submitters and stuff. Is
Yes,
that true?
yes, it's true.
Even if they
If you
know about
believe
the Quran?
only Yes, if you believe only one God and do not do idol worship, you can be submitter in any regulation. I'm sorry. You can be Christian submitter, you can be Hindu submitter, it doesn't matter.
So from my understanding, that is correct, right? But don't the Christians and Jews do salat as well?
Not
No,
No, okay.
I was just gonna say,
So that is only
like a
after
Hindu
Abraham.
submitter doesn't do salat, a Christian submitter doesn't do salat. They do the minimum criteria in the verse that was put right now, 262. They believe in God, believe in the last day, and lead a righteous life. Those three is what you need.
Yeah, doesn't righteous life include salat?
if you
Only
know
if you
about it.
know about it. Know about it. If you don't know about it, you're not required to know to do that. It's because you're born with instinctive knowledge about God. That's what you're responsible for. That's in 30:30. I put it, inshallah.
As we see in chapter 4, verse 136, anyone who doesn't believe in messengers or scriptures has gone far astray.
Yeah.
That's not true because if you don't know about them, then you're
Yeah,
not
I,
responsible. You're
I
responsible
agree.
for what you
But
know.
today, everyone has heard about Islam, Quran, and Muhammad. So, like, if you just willfully remain ignorant about it, you refuse to
No,
read it, to acknowledge it, then you're far astray.
no,
Um,
actually you can know Quran, but like I can know Quran, but it doesn't mean that I read it fully. Like yes, a Christian can know what Quran means. It can like they can say, oh, this is what Muslim believes. This is Muslim's book, but that doesn't mean that they read it. It doesn't like mean that you can just like read one verse. No, you have to read all of it or most of it to know about Quran. It's not just knowing the
And
name of it.
Right. So if
can I
To
someone
just make a
make
reads
clarification on that?
113 chapters and leaves out one
Hold on.
chapter, he has
No,
an
it's not.
excuse to deny everything.
Hold on. No, it's not about the number of chapters you read. It's about the religion that's presented to you. If you're presented the satanic cult religion of Sunniism, you're not responsible for worshiping as they worship.
Can you
Right?
repeat what you said?
I said it's not about the number of chapters you've read. It's about what the information you have, right? So if you only know about the Sunni religion, you're not responsible for following them. They don't have evidence for their religion. If you're presented with the Quran and the proof for it, and that's
If you
different.
follow Rashad religion,
I mean, it's not Rashad's religion. This is submission. This
well,
is
it's not Sunni
the same
religion.
religion since all of.
I joined in a little late. What are we doing? Are we just debating or are we reading? What's going on?
So we read, and we were talking, and then got kind of into the question is what it means to lead a righteous life. So, yeah, for the purpose of this Quran study, this is not meant to be a debate, so we can share our understanding and just kind of leave it at that. I wanted to make a point is whatever we have, all that does is it makes us more responsible. Meaning that if someone has a lot of money, someone has a little money, the person with more money is going to be more responsible. The person who has more status, more connection, better looks, like all these things that we have as blessings, all that gives us is more responsibility. If we have more miracles, right? We've seen more proofs. We've seen, say, for instance, if you're a PhD in astrophysics, you have more responsibility than the person who's completely clueless about the cosmos. It's because God has blessed you with this information. The question is, are you going to use that information to draw closer to God or further away? In Surah 5, verse 115, we read about the individuals, the believers among Jesus, that they said, Jesus, give us a feast from the sky, to reassure our hearts. And God responds in 115 says, God said, I am sending it down. Anyone among you who disbelieves after this, I will punish him as I never punish anyone else. And that with each blessing, ayat, a miracle, proof, scripture, wisdom we have, all that gets us is more responsibility. If we use these to draw closer to God, we're going to basically be elevated in righteousness. But if with this knowledge, it only repels us further away from God, we're going to be that much more suffering of retribution. So each, how we're going to be ranked is going to be commensurate with the challenges and turbulations and the blessings that we've given. Someone who lives a very, how do you put it, strenuous life, it really is just a reflection of the degree of their faith, if they can maintain faith throughout all that. That's why when we read the histories of the prophets and messengers, they were really shaken up, and we read it in the previous verse when we thought we were reading the right section in 2:14. It says, let me just read it again. It says, do you expect to enter paradise without being tested like those before you? Were tested with hardship and adversity and were shaken up until the messenger and those who believed with him said, where's God's victory? God's victory is near.
When I hear about adversity, I think to myself, is it talking about a physical kind, right? That's what it sounds like.
Could be either or, There's a lot of, you think of, okay, here's a thought experiment. Think about every single event in your life that you worried over, you panicked, you rushed, it caused you anxiety, right? Every single thing that you were able to overcome by God's leave, each one of those is an adversity. The thing is, you come to realize because it ended up going fine, you ended up, not being destroyed by this. You realize all that was utterly useless. All that anxiety, all that worry, all that frustration. And that's the thing is adversity could be physical, right? But more often than not, at least in this generation, it's mental.
Yeah.
That's why, like, you can distinguish a believer from a disbeliever, not because, hey, they're willing to go to war. It's because you just see how they live their life. How are they being a productive member of society? Are they helping people in need? Or are they spending their time just like, again, filling their mind with like nonsense and wasting this precious opportunity we have to be redeemed.
Yeah.
God tells us repeatedly in the Quran. We read it in 112 that if we do the things that God expects from us, that the reward for that is that we have no fear and we don't grieve. And you think about fear is something that's going to happen in the future, right? We don't fear about the past; we fear about the future. And grieve is something about the past. You have a regret. Oh, why did I do this? Why did I do that? I should have
Oh,
spent my time doing this. It's like if you're in that absolute submission, you don't have any regrets of the past because that's what brought you to where you are now. You have no fear of the future because you know that God is doing absolutely everything. And with that peace of mind, that's what submission is that you say, look, I'm going to do these things that God expects from me,
I,
that
I,
God
I
can
thought
do.
it was always.
Go, Robert.
Oh no, I lagged out, so I couldn't hear you.
Hmm.
But what I wanted to say was I thought that this was in reference to the last day, that there wouldn't be no fear, no grief. But you're saying it could also include right now.
Oh, it is right now. Yeah. I mean,
Oh,
this is the misconception is that we think that we have to wait until the day of judgment to get, either the retribution or the reward. God tells us that, if we do this, that this is God's inviolable, unchangeable law. So if we read, it's worth reading from 1061. Here, let me put it in on 1061 through 67. Didn't seem to like that. Okay, well, I'll just read from it.
wait,
It says that.
I think there
Go
was
ahead.
a little space between it. I think that's why. So,
Oh, that. Okay, let me try it again.
oh,
Quran.
I did it.
Perfect. God bless. So it says, "You do not get into any situation, nor do you recite any Quran, nor do you do anything without us being witnesses thereof, as you do it. Not even an atom's weight is out of your Lord's control, be it in the heavens or the earth. Nor is there anything smaller than an atom or larger that is not recorded in a profound record." It says, absolutely, God's allies have nothing to fear, nor will they grieve. For those who believe and lead a righteous life, for them joy and happiness in this world as well as the hereafter. This is God's unchangeable law, such as the greatest triumph.
Okay.
The misconception people have is they think like, oh, you have to do all these things blindly, and then in the hereafter you'll get, your reward. God is telling you if you do these things now, in essence, God will correct every single one of your steps. Because yeah, what do you have to fear or grieve if you submitted 100% to God alone?
I think the translation of verse 64 is wrong. It's not the joy and happiness in this world, but rather like good tidings or good
Okay.
news.
Hey, Jamal, we're not going to debate the translation during the Quran studies that we discussed in the past.
Sure, I'm just here to warn people like that's wrong translation.
Yeah.
Jamal, please, not right now, bro. This is Quran study.
The devil always has to have his point of view. If someone wants to think that they can do everything right and then live a life of basically pain and misery, I mean, they're free to believe so. But, if you believe that God is in absolute control, the question is, what would God gain from punishing you if you became appreciative and believed?
I was going to say this whole concept, it speaks to how God is in your everyday life moments. Like if something good is happening to you, that's from God. If you get a pinch, that's from you, and this is God communicating with you. So as your life goes on, you're you're understanding where God's leading you, and you are getting less and less pinches, and you're getting less and less anxious and less uncertain. And it's a continual process because he's in your life, literally guiding you.
I'm putting the verse 147. It says, "What will God gain from punishing you if you became appreciative and believed?" God is appreciative, omniscient. It doesn't make sense if we're part of God's constituency. We're serving most gracious, that we would suffer any ounce of unnecessary injustice. Someone who believes realizes that every single thing that happens to them is all for their good, because God has their best interest in mind. He knows exactly what events, what circumstances they need to go through to be able to live up to their potential.
There was a discussion continuing on this where Dr. Khalifa had said, if you're too arrogant to recognize why you're getting pinched, then the problem will just continue. And I think that a lot of us, we live our lives and we think life just has to be like this, that these problems will continue because that's life. But I believe that actually it's just us having aspect blindness to the problem that God is communicating to us.
You can do from 116 to 123. Perfect. I want to read those.
I'll just do it. They said, God has begotten a son. Be he glorified. Never. To him belongs everything in the heavens and the earth. All are subservient to him. I want to reread that. They said, God has begotten a son. Be he glorified. Never. To him belongs everything in the heavens and the earth. All are subservient to him. I wanted to change that because there's kind of implied it's ridiculous. This is a crazy notion. The initiator of the heavens and the earth, to have anything done, he simply says to it, be, and it is. Those who possess no knowledge say, if only God could speak to us, or some miracle could come to us. Others before them have uttered similar utterances. Their minds are similar. We do manifest the miracles for those who have attained certainty. Should I read all of it?
Sure. Yeah. Why not?
Okay. We have sent you with the truth as a bearer of good news, as well as a warner. You are not answerable for those who incur hell. I'll read the footnote here. It is my obligation to point out that the identity of this messenger is confirmed to be Rashad Khalifa, God's messenger of the covenant. By adding the geometrical value of Rashad, 505, plus the geometrical value of Khalifa, 725, plus the verse number, 119, we get 1349, a multiple of 19, C 381 and Appendix 2. Okay, to 120, Quran. Neither the Jews nor the Christians will accept you unless you follow their religion. Say, God's guidance is the true guidance. If you acquiesce to their wishes, despite the knowledge you have received, you will find no ally or supporter to help you against God. Am I going to 123? Is that what you said?
Yeah. We'll just read to 123.
Okay. Neither the Jews, I already read that. Those who receive the scripture and know it as it should be known will believe in this. As for those who disbelieve, they are the losers. O children of Israel, remember my favor which I bestowed upon you, and that I blessed you more than any other people. Beware of the day when no soul will help another soul. No ransom will be accepted, no intercession will be useful, and no one will be helped.
Any comments or questions? One thing that I think is always interesting is that the infatuation with the Christians, you say that Jesus is God's begotten son, as if Jesus, God gave birth. Like it's so funny that they want to use that terminology to describe this relationship. Um, it's something. It's disturbing. It's not much different than the eating of the flesh and drinking of the blood of Jesus. It's just so morbidly grotesque. They've made this into the pillar of their belief. I think it's in 359. This is interesting. If I can pull it up. It says the example of Jesus as far as God is concerned is the same as that of Adam. He created him from dust, then said to him, "Be," and he was. That all it takes for a God to create something is just to say be, and it is. Then we see that the word Jesus and the word Adam both occur 25 times in the Quran. But there's other connections, if I'm not mistaken, between them. The 19th occurrence of both Jesus and Adam, if I'm not mistaken, occur. Let me see if I have this. In the 19th chapter of the Quran, but I might be wrong on that. I got to double check. But yeah, these connection that this is like a system that God utilizes in the Quran as kind of a proof of authenticity, where this was like the original discovery was that the number of times certain words are used are divinely orchestrated. And it's a sign to show that look, this collection of verses are not just random. There is a very deep design in them.
I think it's also important to note how our human tendency is to want absolute proof in front of us. Like, I want to see it with my eyes. I want to hear it. I want to know in the same way that I know that gravity exists. I want to know that you're here, God, that we're demanding that of God. And there's almost like a defiance to the notion that we would be sent here being tested. That wait a second, you mean I have to believe this without having this kind of proof that I'm used to? It's kind of an arrogant objection.
I pasted an article where it shows that both Jesus and Adam, the names occur in the Quran 25 times. The seventh occurrence of both of them is in 359, or it says the example of Jesus is that like of Adam, God said to it be, and it is. And then in the 19th occurrence, they both occur in 1934. Where Jesus and Adam is 1934, and then the 19th occurrence of Adam is in 1958. And if I'm not mistaken, there's another connection with 34 where Mary is mentioned 34 times, if I'm not mistaken. Really quick. times. So in 1934, where Jesus is mentioned for the 19th time, it just happens that Mary is mentioned 34 times in the Quran as well. This kind of touches on in 118. It says, "Those who possess no knowledge say, if only God could speak to us, or some miracle could come down to us. Others before them have uttered similar utterances. Their minds are similar." And it says, "We do manifest the miracles for those who have attained certainty." The reality is, we're inundated with miracles. The difference is a believer sees this and says, look, this is divinely orchestrated. A disbeliever sees it and says, it's just a coincidence. If you guys have ever watched the movie Pulp Fiction, there's this famous scene where John Travolta and Samuel L. Jackson, so they're assassins and or hitmen, and they're basically there to execute this person. They don't know that in the bathroom is someone hiding with a gun. And the guy kicks the door, shoots at both John Travolta and Samuel L. Jackson, and at point blank range, and misses. And then Samuel L. Jackson and John Travolta are at a diner, and Samuel L. Jackson's character is saying, like, look, this is divine intervention. We should not be here right now. And John Travolta's character is like, he's just a bad shot. You're reading too much into this. And it's the same thing. We get brought into this world. We're inundated with miracles left and right for anyone who just wants to open their eyes. It's everywhere. But a believer sees this and is humbled and is wowed by the marvels of God. But a disbeliever sees this and says, it's just a coincidence. What's the big deal? And this is like the distinction between a believer and a disbeliever. And it's interesting that it uses the expression says their minds are similar. In that irrespective, they're born today or 1,000 years ago, the people who fail to recognize God's miracles, their minds are the same. They're just incapable of recognizing the sheer amazingness of this, and they just write it all off as, it's just a coincidence. The biggest culprits of this are the ones who are, the most educated. You think about all these professors and PhDs who are like devout atheists. That despite all the proofs, all the amazing things they're able to understand and tap into, somehow they have to convince themselves that this was not done by design. This was done by chance, and I think it's like Dawkins in which book was it? It says you have to constantly tell yourself that this is not designed, right? Because they see the truth, they see it, and they have to make an active decision to denounce it. And God allows them in that decision to confirm their belief.
In fact, that was the reason for Einstein's greatest blunder, in his own words, was his insistence that it was too undesirable to accept the possibility that there was a beginning to something. So in his formula, he put a constant in to offset what his results were telling him, because it was too unfavorable to see that the universe was expanding. And it took Edwin Hubble and the subsequent experiments after that to prove to him that he was absolutely wrong, in which he calls it his greatest blunder.
You just see the level they go through to try to denounce anything that will prove God's existence, magnificence. They try to create these constructs to edge God out. And what's interesting is that acronym is ego, edging God out. So they see this equation and it points towards a singularity, right? Because they saw, like Einstein saw that it's like, look, if the universe is expanding at a certain rate, if you run this in reverse, you're going to get a singularity. You're going to get, the moment when the universe was initially created.
Right.
And it was too much of a how do you put it? A cognitive dissonance for him, despite the fact that he believed in a God, but he didn't believe in a personal God, to think that God created this universe, that from this singularity, you basically created space and time, basically fudged his equations to circumvent that option. Ego kicked in.
You also have, a lot of people who say that nature is very chaotic. Well, I don't think that's true. I don't think it doesn't look chaotic to me at all.
It's chaotic when you don't understand the system, right? So this is actually really interesting. There was a person he's designing flight simulation, and he wanted to create landscapes. And he's like, okay, how do you mathematically create a landscape for, like, say, a mountain range or a river? And he was looking, and he couldn't figure it out. He says, it just looks like chaos. And then he stumbled on this guy, Mandelbrot, who had this concept of a fractal, where in essence you get a pattern within a pattern within a pattern. You run that into infinity. And it's a very simple kind of pattern, but on the outside it looks infinitely complex. So he's like, oh, well, let me try this. So he did that, and he said, okay, I'm going to create a triangle within a triangle within a triangle within a triangle. And then you have these, like, kind of majestic, they look like real nature simulations that he created. And a lot of times when we think it's chaos, it's only chaos because we don't understand the system. We don't understand the intricacies.
Yeah.
If anyone's a Matrix fan, I just watched the trilogy again, and it's like, this is the whole thing that the humans struggle with, is that they think that it's chaos. They think that there's no rhyme or reason, and these are metaphors for other aspects. Like, no, there is an algorithm behind this. There is a meaning, but a lot of times we just fail to see it. If you take the example of Moses and his teacher, so Moses is an honored messenger of God.
Yeah.
He's gone through all these ordeals, all these tests, right? You think if anyone's like, you're not going to find too many people more righteous, more committed to God than Moses.
Yeah.
Sure. He literally, like, losing his mind. He says, the teacher's response is, how can you comprehend that which you do not understand? In the sense where it's like he sees him doing these acts, and it seems like chaos. It seems like injustice.
Yeah.
And then finally, when the teacher explains to him, hey, these are the reasons, like, okay. it's just funny. You get to a point of complete objection to absolute submission. But sometimes, God gives us the answers to why things turn out the way they do. Sometimes he doesn't. Any thoughts about 120? It says, neither the Jews nor the Christians will accept you unless you follow their religion. Say, God's guidance is the true guidance. If you acquire their wish, despite the knowledge you have received, you find no ally or supporter to help against God.
Yeah.
It's interesting how valuable these labels are for the God is setting this as a precedent of the Jews and the Christians. It's like, oh, if you have the right label, then you will be accepted. But if God forbid you don't use the label of Christian or Jew, you're not going to be accepted in the hereafter. And it's just the arrogance that these are terms that, again, human beings have come up, and they think that now these are divinely representations of what the truth is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, I think Jew comes from Judah, which is one of Israel's 12 sons. And Christian comes from Christoph, which means Messiah in Greek. It's like, these are names that in essence they've morphed for themselves to represent their group, their in crowd. And
I
it's
think
also
it's
Oh, go ahead, Jeff.
Oh, I was going to say, I think it's important to recognize that when God says Jews and Christians, that it's what the Jews and Christians were as of that time and going forward in the year 600, or in the 600s. And why is that important? Well, because by that time, the Christians did have their Bible the way it was. The Jews had changed into what they were, basically with the Talmud. They had those structures were in place. So I think of when God is calling them not people of the Scripture, but Jews and Christians specifically, He's speaking to as they were at that time, and not like a Christian who would have been like an early Christian, perhaps, who was actually just following the words of Jesus, or perhaps Jews that were, well, I'll just leave it at that. Yeah.
I think 120 is also a good representation of social pressure, where it says, if you requested their wishes despite the knowledge you have received, you will find no ally or supporter to help you against God. You see how many people, like they claim, they say, oh yeah, if I was living at the time of the messengers or the prophets, like in the context of Moses, they'd say, oh yeah, absolutely, I would sacrifice that heifer, no questions asked. I would enter the gate humbly, no questions asked. If Saul told me to not drink from the river, I wouldn't drink from the river. If Muhammad told me to, hey, go pick up arms and mobilize for war, I'd do it. But then we see individuals just how utterly fragile they are when they get the smallest bit of social pressure from
Yeah.
their communities, that it's like, be it Jewish, Christian, Muslim, that when they see the truth, they recognize the truth, that the social stigma of leaving their previous misconceptions hard. They don't want to lose those connections, those friendships, and how quick they're willing to denounce God in the guidance in order to maintain these like flimsy relationships. On the day of judgment, God says that the individual is going to care about their close friend, isn't going to care about their wife or their children, isn't going to care about their entire tribe. And if they could give every single human being as ransom to
Wow.
spare them the retribution, that they would do so. But in
Yeah.
this world, not to say that we diminish these, the love and care we have for other human beings, be it our spouse, children, parents, family, but we should never put that above our love for God. We were talking about this the other day in Surah 9, verse 24. This is like one of the inevitable tests. Proclaim, if your parents, your children, your siblings, your spouses, your family, the money you have earned, the business you worry about, the homes you cherish, are more beloved to you than God and his messenger in striving in his cause, just wait until God brings his judgment. God does not guide the wicked people. If someone's only going to consider you a friend if you join them in church, or if you join them in their synagogue, and you decide to uphold that other than the commandments given to you by God, it shows where your faith is, where your love is. But every day, we have a choice. At dawn, we have a choice. We can be in love with our bed and our comfy pillow. We can get up, do ablution, and do our salat. We can, decide to say, hey, you know what? I'm just gonna enjoy my lunch and just, relax. Or you can go, do your salat and spend those few minutes to make God your priority. Your business can be like, hey, I can't have you leave on Fridays. You can concede and say, okay, I'm going to do what my work expects from me. Or you're going to say, no, this is a obligation for me, and God will provide. And make God the priority. Every single uh, day in our life, we're basically put to that choice. Satan's always going to be tempting us to move away from God. If every single time, each time we make that choice, it's like we're doing reps. You think about an Olympic athlete at when they're not, competing, they're out training. They're at the gym. They're running sprints. They're doing, these exercises. And our salat operates in the same manner. is that, 5 times a day we have a choice. We can choose this world or we can choose to worship God. If each time we say we're going to make God our priority, and when we're actually put to the test, when we're really shaken up, God willing, we'll make the right choice at those, junctures as well. Think about it, like an Olympic athlete, they train for years, only like a few seconds of a competition, and for
Yeah.
us, it's the same thing. We do all this training, this practice to make sure that we make God our priority. When it really counts, when we're put to the test, that God willing, we make the right choice. It doesn't phase us. God willing, yeah. Any other thoughts or comments? Just make a couple more comments just from the last 3 verses. Then, God willing, we can move to open discussion. In 121 it says, "Those who receive the scripture notice it should be known will believe in this. As for those who disbelieve, they are the losers." One of the blessings we have is if we are sincere, if we do the things that God has instinctively put into us to worship God alone, to believe in a hereafter, to want to do good works, that God is going to allow us to see the truth. That's why one of the verses it says they recognize the scripture like they recognize their own children. That we're going to have a natural tendency to gravitate towards righteousness. But someone who spends their life committing sin, being an evil, wicked person, they're not going to be able to recognize the truth even when they see it. If anything, they're going to be repelled by it. What they're going to be attracted to are the very things that are going to lead to their demise. This is like it's a powerful prayer to be able to, God willing, have sincerity. When we see the truth, we fall in love with it. It's not simply that we just like recognize it, but we're like genuinely fascinated with it. I think about the many people, the millions and billions of people on this planet. How many of them are saying, "Hey, you know what? I'm going to take time out of my day to study God's scripture." Verse, oh, let me go hang out with some friends. Let me go, watch Netflix. It's a weekend and this and
Yeah.
that. And just being distracted. The fact that, all of us were sitting on uh, uh, this server together and just like reflecting on the words of God. It's such a huge blessing to not only, it's one of these things that God willing, all of us, we get joy out of this. Like hearing the word of God brings healing and comfort to our hearts. In 122, it says, "O children of Israel, remember my favor which I bestowed upon you, and I bless you more than any other people." Funny,
Yeah.
it's God gives us all this, and we can either be appreciative and realize that just means we're more responsible, or we can become arrogant and be like, "Look at all these blessings God's given me. I'm totally in God's camp. Even if I'm returned to my Lord, I'm gonna have a better provisions over there." This is how like the devil uses these blessings that God has given us to lead people astray. The fact that we have this Quran, we have this beautiful translation, we have this community, we have other believers that we can consult and discuss and grow our souls with. These are huge blessings, but it's also a giant responsibility in the sense where you can't. The people in the past. Think about Abraham, right? He's a child. He's in a community full of idol worshippers. At that time, he doesn't have the slot. He doesn't have the zakat. All he has is an instinctive knowledge and devotion to God alone. And he had to be steadfast. He had to be willing to stand up to debate with his people, to not give in and side with the disbelievers and the idol worshippers to fit in. Um, and the challenge that must take. The thought, you think your entire community, your father's threatening to stone you, and you must think at some point you're like, I must be crazy. How is it that no one else sees this? How is it that they're worshiping these statues, these things? And even Abraham's father is like, if you don't refrain, I'm going to stone you, meaning that he recognized that these are just rocks. And it must make a person feel crazy when you're just isolated like that. But, praise God, the fact that we can all connect from all over the world and be able to reflect. Not only is this a huge favor and blessing from God, but also it does come with a great responsibility. And just end with 120. Beware of the day when no soul will help another soul, no ransom will be accepted, no intercession will be useful, and no one will be helped. And God willing, we can move to open discussion.
I just wanted to say, I think the last verse sounds so much as a someone uses this admonition, admonishing. You know what I'm saying?
Admonish, yeah.
Yeah.
Like a warning.
so-
Yeah. Take
Yeah.
heed, like this is coming.
Exactly. So yeah, these verses from 122 till 123, I think that helps to know that, right, and not to acquiesce, as it says, or relent, or give in to the Christians or the Jews and their practices. One practice is very common in Christianity is that you should love all people. Now, personally, I've never read that. They would probably desire that I would do so, and it sounds nice, but it's not something that I read. So I'm not going to do it. And if I would, I'd be acquiescing towards them.
Mm-hmm. Peer pressure.
Yeah. And I won't do it because it's clear that we shouldn't. So thank God.
There's a question that came up regarding the translation for 262 that's just like kind of worth quickly diving into. So the verse says, surely those who believe, those who are Jewish, the Christians, converts, anyone who 1 believes in God, 2 believes in the last day, and then this one, 3 leads a righteous life. And that expression for lead a righteous life, there's different words in Arabic for righteousness. And you'll see that bara is one, which is used. The other one is salah. And each one, they do have different kind of connotations. You'll see in the translation that oftentimes Rashad will translate, in this one, salahin, as righteous as well. So it says amila, so he did, salahan, so righteousness. And then, Rashad put it as leads a righteous life. So, it's one of those things that there's a element of interpretation in that. But just worth clarifying. We could look at the other
say
one.
on
Okay.
I was going to say on 2:123, it's this insistence about your individual responsibility of not being able to hide behind a community or others, that it's you, what you did, what your actions, how your relationship with God is, and it's this insistence on your own responsibility, since that seems to be a good theme going on in this Quran study. And I think that 2:123 is just, it kind of is reinforcing that. Look, it's all about you. What do you believe? This is your life. I think we hide, or we may feel safe when we're in those who believe, but even though believers around us, it doesn't mean that once you become a submitter that you're a believer. That's just the beginning. That you have to look at yourself and see, and it's about purifying you, because you are going to have to answer for your life with God and all of those things, and to answer to all the things you believe and what you do alone, you alone. So
Yep. People say you're born alone. Well, that might not even be true. You might be a twin. So not everybody's born alone. And people say you die alone, which is also not true. You might even die, I don't know, with your best friend next to you. But you do get questioned all by yourself. Like when we get resurrected, no other soul can help us. So that is when you're truly alone, indeed, when you're questioned.
I was reading today. This is kind of interesting. So Thomas Jefferson and John Adams, right, two of the founding fathers of the United States, both died on the same day, which was July 4th, 1826, exactly on the 50th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence.
Mm.
It's kind of a cool.
Interesting, yeah. I don't even know how they died, to be honest.
I don't know the exact cause, but they were both old. Like, it's actually interesting. So let's see, how old was Thomas Jefferson? 83 years old.
That's old. Wow.
Yeah.
Tremendous.
The funny thing is, we hear these stats like, oh, the average age was like 40 years, hundreds of years ago. That's only because of infant mortality. If you take basically, if someone survives past the age of 5, the likeliness they're going to survive till old age was relatively high. But it's just that aspect that the first 5 years is always the biggest risk factor in the past. It totally skews the age, the median age of death.
Right. Yeah.
Past statistics. Any other open questions or comments or anything else that people want to share or discuss? There's a topic we were briefly talking about. Can't remember, right before the study. Do you remember what it was?
There was a need to explain how God is doing everything and we are doing what we're doing.
Yeah. So yeah, what's our responsibility? What's how does that reconcile with God is doing everything? Surah 13, verse 11. It says, shifts of angels take turns staying with each one of you. They're in front of you and behind you. They stay with you and guard you in accordance with God's commands. Thus, God does not change the condition of any people unless they themselves make the decision to change. If God wills any hardship for any people, no force can stop it, for they have none beside him as Lord and Master. This expression that it's God does not change the condition of any people unless they themselves make the decision to change. The way I see it is, God created a system. Whatever it is that we believe, God is going to allow us to continue in that belief structure. We're going to make decisions and suffer outcomes based on whatever initial decision we make. Every so often, we hit these junctures in our life where we realize, hey, we're on the wrong path and we can correct it, or we're on the right path and we're going to be tested and potentially choose the wrong path. It's at those junctures that, in essence, we can change the trajectory of our life. The example that always comes to mind is in Surah with Abraham. So let me pull it up really quick. So here. Okay. When Abraham went and he broke the idols, these statues that they had, he left the big one. And it says in 21:58, it says, he broke them into pieces except for the big one, that they may refer to it. They said, whoever did this to our gods is really a transgressor. They said, we heard a youth threaten them. He is called Abraham. They said, bring him before the eyes of all the people that they may bear witness. They said, did you do this to our gods, O Abraham? Abraham, so he said, It is the big one who did it. Go ask them if they can speak. And this is the verse that I wanted to in 64. It says, they were taken aback and said to themselves, indeed, you are the ones who have been transgressing. This moment, they recognize that the path they're on is the wrong path. Then 65 says, yet they reverted to their old ideas. You know full well that these cannot speak. Because at that moment of cognitive dissonance, they realize that they're worshiping these statues that they carved themselves with their own hands, that they were the ones who were astray. They were the ones who were transgressing. So at that moment, they could have decided, said, you know what, you're right. This is dumb. We're going to correct ourselves. Then, their blindness kicked in. It's willful blindness. And they basically went back to their old ways and said, you know full well that these cannot speak. Every so often, we run into something that, in essence, is going to make us reassess, the truth. And it's going to basically point out that, hey, we might, be on the wrong path. If we just ignore it, we just, don't analyze it, we don't think about it, and we just say, oh, whatever, move on. And we might miss that opportunity to really correct ourselves.
Could you expand upon the it is not you who threw, it was God who threw aspect of this?
Yeah. Once we make the decision, okay, this is 8:17. So it was not you who killed them, God is the one who killed them. It was not you who threw when you threw, God is the one who threw. He thus gives the believers a chance to earn a lot of credit. God is here omniscient. Aspect is we have to make the decision to take action. Once we make that decision, God takes over. The sense of whatever we do from there is 100% in God's hands. But He gives us these opportunities. Are you going to sit on your butt and do nothing, or are you going to get up and mobilize? Once you make that decision, God is the one who carries you through the actions from there. It's interesting, all it takes is that thought. If we make the thought of saying, for instance, like what we pray for, what we meditate on, what we focus on, God is going to take us to that outcome. In essence, if we already psych ourselves out, like take the consideration of Satan. Satan had supercilious thoughts that he, in essence, was, more more full of himself, and he thought he was getting credit for. And God created a situation to expose those thoughts, those inner thoughts that he had. God does the same thing for us. We say, oh, we're charitable, we're considerate, we care for others. So God's going to put us in those situations to bring out our true convictions. And so when I see this, when it says like, it was not you who threw when you threw, is that you made the decision to mobilize for war. Everything that happens after that is up to God. In the sense where it's like, it says in 3:154, those who had, let me see if that's the right verse. After the setback, he sent down upon you peaceful slumber that pacified some of you. Others among you were selfishly concerned about themselves. They harbored thoughts about God that were not right. So these are just thoughts that they're having. The same thoughts they harbored during the days of ignorance. Thus, they said, is anything up to us? Hey, everything is up to God. Concealed inside themselves what they did not reveal to you. They said, it was up to us. None of us would have been killed in this battle. Say, had you stayed in your homes, those destined to be killed would have been crawled into their deathbeds. God thus puts you to the test to bring out your true convictions, to test what's in your hearts. God is fully aware of the innermost thoughts. That these individuals simply had the thought. God put them in the situation to bring out that thought, to bring it to fruition, to let them see for themselves why they made the decisions they did. As far as the outcome, if they're going to live or die, that was already predestined. That if they went to battle or if they stayed in their beds, if they were meant to die, they would have died. This is the concept that God is just telling you, saying, look, you have this control in the sense of what decisions you make, what proclamations you make, what prayers you make, what thoughts you entertain. After that, whatever happens from there is 100% up to God. This is something that's fascinating. I mean, simply having good thoughts, ridding ourselves of things that in essence are sinful and harmful, is going to ramify in other aspects of our life. I can't be a deceitful, egotistical, lying, conniving person in my mind and expect that this is not going to manifest itself in my day-to-day actions.
Can I say something?
Of course.
Mashallah, that was really good. Assalamu alaikum, everybody. I think to go off of this, kind of like this conversation we we're having yesterday, it's like these are very heavy subjects, right? These are deep issues. And so someone was saying, well, you guys believe if you die under the age of 40, you're going to go to heaven. Go kill go kill yourself. And the idea is, look, God says he controls life and death. And this verse that we just read, it's the truth. It doesn't matter. My time of death is already determined by God. It doesn't matter if I stay at home or if I go to war or if I do any of these things. It's up to God. So the fact is that God says suicide is prohibited. I'm not doing that. But even if I attempted it, God is the one who decides if I'm leaving this planet or not. Actually, they did a statistical analysis. 8 to 13% of the million suicide attempts were actually successful. It's 90% chance of you're going to fail on your suicide attempt. So this people that talk like this, they're underestimating what the whole system is, who God is, how powerful he is, and just how deep all of this is. It's not superficial. We're talking about a message from the Lord of the universe, right? This is not a small thing. So, I mean, this is a very profound message. God says it calls it a heavy message, and we need to grasp these concepts gradually. God says in 5:101, don't ask about stuff that if revealed to you prematurely will hurt you. They will become obvious to you over time. Oh, you believe? Do not ask about matters which, if revealed to you prematurely, would hurt you. If you ask about them in light of the Quran, they will become obvious to you. God has deliberately overlooked them. God is forgiver, clement. And I just want to say one thing. This is the case with so many issues, because last night we were talking about this with a couple of submitters, young submitters. We were talking about dress code, and we were talking about different topics, and it's very obvious. God spoke about the topics that he did in the way that he chose. There was no issue for God to just say, look, cover your hair to the best of ability, and that's it, right? But he deliberately said it in this way to test the people. And obviously the vast majority fail. Same thing for age of 40, right? God could have easily just said very blatantly and very explicit terms, if you die under age of 40, you're going to heaven. Obviously we believe in it, but it's not stated in that way exactly. It requires some level of faith. It requires some level of depth of understanding, etc. So we have to be patient. These all have to do with our development of our growth of our soul and the deeper understandings. Sorry, I talked a lot. That was just my comment.
To share.
Salam
Oh, go ahead, Nancy.
Salam alaikum. My concern is like three three things I could not connect. Like if everything predestined and but this predestined based on our decision. If everything is based on our decision, how come God is doing everything? Like if we are deciding everything and God knows that, that's why he wrote everything, then how come God is doing everything? Like this connection, I can like connecting dot is having trouble for me.
I think
You know,
Jeff.
oh, before I would love to hear your answer to it, but I wanted to interject one thing that maybe you could expand upon as well. I thought that was a really good explanation of how our thoughts are put to the test. But when I read the message in 2151 that before that we granted Abraham his guidance and understanding, for we were fully aware of him. And the footnote says, was Abraham so smart as to discover God, or did God grant him the intelligence because he knew that he deserved to be saved? So that I was just thinking that there's the thoughts that are in our brain, but there's a deeper place that emanates those thoughts, and that is the heart. I think it's like, and the decision is that deep decision from the heart, and that the understandings and our thoughts emanate from that, and so that in this verse, God is even giving him the thoughts, the understandings. So that's, I just wanted to put that in there.
Give my 2 cents. I think the concept is whatever decision we make, right, in our minds, God is going to direct our footsteps to correspond with that decision. And that if I make a decision to believe, that God is going to guide my actions, draw me closer to faith. If I make a decision to disbelieve, then God's going to guide my actions towards things that are going to reconfirm my disbelief. Take the consideration of what we just discussed, where a individual says, "Hey, I'm not going to go to battle," and because of that, they're not going to have the motivation. They've already made the decision in their mind. God is not going to allow them even go to battle. Then the ones who basically do it reluctantly, God is going to put them in a situation to show their reluctance. This is always the case. Is we make the intention. We know what's inside our hearts. God is going to create the conditions for that to be manifest in reality. So in that case, Satan has these supercilious thoughts. God creates the conditions to expose those thoughts. But God is the one who's doing everything. Only freedom of choice we have is in the sense of what we mentally decide to choose. Once we make that decision, God is going to lead us in that outcome. It's all per God's design. Take something like, for instance, in Surah 19, verse 75 and 76. Put that in really quick. To say, those who choose to go astray, the most gracious will lead them on until they see what is promised for them, either the retribution or the hour. That is when they find out who really is worse off and weaker in power. So God is saying, if you choose, this is a mental thing, you choose to go astray, that's your footsteps, your actions are going to correspond with that belief. In 76, it says, God augments the guidance of those who choose to be guided. The good deeds are eternally rewarded by your Lord and bring a far better returns. So we simply make that decision. We make that proclamation, in the sense that this is what we're going to do. We trust in God that he's going to help us in that direction. It's going to be best for us. Take an extreme example, Joseph. Joseph was a righteous, devout individual. God was coordinating every single thing that happened in his life. His brothers turning on him, throwing him into the well, from him being sold into slavery, from him being thrown into prison. God was guiding every single one of these steps. From an outside observer, we would look at this and be like, oh my God, what a terrible life this poor child had. His brothers left him for dead. He was sold into slavery. He was lied and thrown into prison. From an observer, someone who trusts in God, knows that, okay, these are the steps Joseph needed to go through in order to be able to be brought to his potential. God was coordinating every single thing, that once he made that proclamation that he's going to worship God alone, that he's going to be devoted to God alone, that he submits to whatever God wills. And a disbeliever, they basically, the only thing they're doing is they're submitting unwillingly. God is still controlling their outcome. God is still controlling the events. They think that they're in control. Even take again the example of Satan. Satan said, look, I'm not going to submit. I'm not going to basically serve Adam. What is Satan doing today? He's literally doing what he said he wasn't going to do. He's testing the human being. He's purifying us. He's saying he's not going to submit, but he's submitting unwillingly. Just fascinating. That's the only choice we have. Are we going to submit willingly or unwillingly? Either way, God is the one who's going to control that outcome. Imagine being on a stream, trying to swim upstream. You're still going to follow the tide. You're still going to follow the current. You're not going to change the direction of the river. All you can do is either go with the flow or, in essence, be an objector and spend your whole life in pain and suffering and stuff because you fail to just submit to God's will.
That awesome analogy. I mean, just think, how tires, and you're just going to keep rowing against the current, and you're literally going backwards. But yet you spend your entire life through extreme exhaustion and pain and disappointment, and it's a good analogy.
I didn't understand the last part, Peter. I'm sorry. Um,
Regarding the stream,
yeah, the swim. Just last few minutes, I didn't understand that part.
it's saying, the only choice we have, we either submit willingly or unwillingly, meaning that the person who submits willingly is not going to fear, is not going to grieve. They're going to know that God is in absolute control, meaning whatever happens to them is because God wills it and it's what's best for them. The person who submits unwillingly, they're still going to have the same outcomes, but the entire time they're going to be complaining and objecting and angry and frustrated because they refuse to submit willingly. They're going to spend their whole life, in essence, thinking that they're in control, and that's the analogy, trying to swim upstream. At the end of the day, God's the one who's controlling that stream and where the outcome's going to be.
Okay, thank you. But if I submit unwillingly, how come I'm submitting? If
It's
I'm
because
not submitting, I mean, I don't have the will. I mean, I don't want to I'm not willingly submitting. That which means I don't want to submit. How come the person is submitting?
So if you're submitting unwillingly, you're still submitting. So the example was Satan. Satan says, "Look, I'm not going to submit." God told him, "Hey, serve Adam in paradise." He says, "I'm not going to do that." Like, okay, then you're just going to use God's going to use Satan to test the human being. He's still serving the human being. He's just serving it in a capacity that he's thinking that he's objecting, but he's just fulfilling God's will. That whatever you choose is in accordance with God's will. God created the fire, right? You can choose to use the fire to stay warm. You can cook food on top of it. You can also decide to stick your finger in it. All this is within God's control. God created that fire. God created the fire that if you stick your finger in it, you're going to get burned. Meaning that it's still God is doing absolutely everything, but the only thing you had was that decision to make that choice. If you chose to disbelieve, it's like sticking your finger into the fire.
Can we address a question that was asked by Kadir earlier, or was it already addressed?
What was the question?
It said disbelievers can't believe because they aren't willing to believe, and that makes them blind. If there would be a miracle, they would not believe it either, right? Am I correct on that? I want to know. So I don't know if it was answered, but inshallah, I can give my opinion on it. The way I understand it is that function of a miracle is to increase the faith of an existing believer. Everyone is born with belief in God, but then they have to actively reject that belief and set it aside. But if there are people who maintain any level of belief, then they witness a miracle, then they can actually believe in that miracle. We learn from 7431 that among the 5 functions of the mathematical miracle, none of them says to make a disbeliever into a believer. The example I get from this is the magicians who witnessed the miracle of Moses. They already believed, but it strengthened their belief and solidified their faith. So when we're talking with people, we don't know. So Katerina wrote, question, was this spoken about? Is there any point in showing the mathematical miracle to those who disbelieve? If they don't believe in God, they won't see the miracle God shows. That's correct. But the problem is there are many times where someone believes in God, but they're just not sure. We don't know. Or they're agnostic about it, or they're just unsure, or they're just open, or they're just unclear. There's so many variables. There's so many ways that this can be, basically distributed. And so when we are dealing with people, I just give the message to everybody, and anyone can witness it. So then the question was, so you're saying when spreading the message, there's no point in showing the mathematical code? No, on the contrary, there is, because it's a blessing. It strengthens the faith of the faithful. The message itself is a beautiful message. People can accept this message, this religion with just the message. The mathematical code provides additional foundation for it. And if anyone has any faith in their heart or God wants to guide them, they will see it. Maybe not today, maybe in 6 months, maybe in a year. And then a verse was put. It says in the Quran, we showed miracles to those who have attained certainty. I was one of James 2:118. Those who possess no knowledge say, if only God could speak to us, or some miracle could come to us. Others before them have uttered similar utterances. Their minds are similar. We do manifest miracles for those who have attained certainty. My understanding is this is mathematical science for those who believe in the code and the Quran. And I've witnessed this many times myself. I see like double 786 or like 5 multiples of 19 at once, or just some crazy, very illogical, proofs, signs in my life that would, so, yeah, it's just my opinion on that, but anyone else can chime in. I appreciate it.
If we read 74:31, it also says to expose those who harbor doubts in their hearts and to disturb the disbelievers. So, if someone makes a decision that they're not going to believe, I put the verse 6:111. Even if we sent down the angels to them, even if the dead spoke to them, even if we summoned every miracle before them, they cannot believe unless God wills it. Indeed, most of them are ignorant. This corresponds with the person's intentions. If someone deserves to believe because they're sincere, they're looking for the truth, God is going to open up their heart. God is going to make the light so bright you're just going to be completely attracted to it. Someone who makes the decision to disbelieve, doesn't matter how bright that light is, they're just going to be repelled by it. They're going to be repulsed, and then they're going to see the path of the strayer, the disbeliever, and that's what's going to they're going to gravitate towards.
One other thing I wanted to say about this is that, sorry, I lost my train of thought. Here, let me think about it. I get it back, inshallah.
Does anyone else have comments? It'd be nice to hear from other people as well. Sure, I just had the Quran open and it's 29:25. It says social pressure, because we were talking about this earlier, profound disaster. He said, you worship beside God powerless idols due to peer pressure just to preserve some friendship among you in this worldly life. Then on the day of resurrection, you will disown one another and curse one another. Your destiny is hell, wherein you cannot help one another.
Yeah.
Powerful.
Yeah. And does it not say anywhere? I believe it says somewhere that in truth, you have no ally besides God. Is that correct?
I have to think about it. Sounds correct, but I can't remember a specific verse. It's like if we ally with the truth, ultimately we're allying with God.
Yeah. Yeah. To me, because I that's what I remember reading, and when I read it, what it makes me think is that we become allies only through God, and indeed God is our only ally in truth. But through him we become allies to one another. God willing. Yeah.
2:120.
You said 2:120? Oh, okay. Yeah.
For anyone that doesn't know how to use the bot, I know
Oh,
there's
right.
newer people here. You just type /Quran and then you put the Quran verse that you want. You can load any verse in the Quran. You can load any appendix /APPX and then the appendix number. You can load a range of verses. You can load the Arabic. You can load the transliteration. So we really are happy to have this bot here available to load the verses for us very quickly. Inshallah, we'll make it stronger over time.
I still have this urge to go a little bit more on that topic of how God is using us, where we're submitting willingly or unwillingly, and it's this idea that if I choose to be very cruel, a tyrant, well, you have to back up, get and see a higher picture, and one will notice that God will place me in the individual's lives who need the tyrant as a test or who deserve it as a punishment. He's operating using my choice in his grander structure. It's
Yeah.
similar to like a cell in a body. All that cell cares about is whether it's going to get its sugar, its protein. That's all it cares about. But when we come from the microscopic to more of just the earth view, you see that, oh, wait, that cell is just playing a role in the body of this person. And that's kind of an analogy of how we're submitting, even if we're not submitting, because we're used in a larger, grander operation.
Yep. Is that you remind me of the verse that says, and they plan and God plans and God is the best of planners. Do you know that?
Mm-hmm.
Mashallah, mashallah. Yeah.
You know that and this goes in accord to what Jeff says. I believe there's also another verse that says, in truth, all plans belong to God. Something like that. Now I have to look it up. I'm gonna have to look it up. Because again, I'm saying something, but let me see if I can actually find it.
Can I just while you're looking at, can I quickly try to address the question raised by God alone? So the question was asked, could someone explain the 7 dialect concept of the Quran, please? I've vaguely heard about it, but would appreciate some clarity, God willing. I think it's actually 7, 7 what was Mus'haf is the writing of the Quran, and I think there's 14 recitations. But basically, the bottom line is this: using the mathematical code, we can identify the most accurate and intact edition of the Quran in existence, and that's the Hafs Quran. So we don't need to worry about the other ones. That's why when you talk to Quranists, you ask them which edition of the Quran did you accept. They don't have an answer; they're unsure. If you ask the traditionalists, they say, well, all of them are correct. God, or through Angel Gabriel, recited all of the, the recitations to Muhammad at the same time, 7 to 14 recitations, and that doesn't make sense. We know that, I believe it's 85. Someone knows the verse, the Master Tablet, it's chapter 85, where there is one Quran. It's in a preserved Master Tablet. There's not 14 Qurans. There's not 7 Qurans. There's one Quran. And that's with God and the angels in the Master Tablet. So this is established for us using the mathematical code. We don't have any doubt about this. Praise God.
To add to that, part of the reason that these different dialects even originated is, and the Quran was originally revealed, is really revealed to the people who spoke Quraysh Arabic, and as the message started proliferating, you have different Arab tribes with their own dialect. So imagine, like in English, we speak, American English, Canadian English, the British English, the Australian English, South African English. Like they're all English, but they're different dialects. But you'll see some very variations in how words are pronounced. And so from that, you have these different dialects of recitation. To add to what Navid was saying. Regarding, just really quick, Jeff, to your point, remind me of this verse. It says, when they're told, so this 36:47 says, when they're told, give from God's provisions to you, those who disbelieve say to those who believe, why should we give to those whom God could feed himself if he so willed? Are really far astray. You know, God is creating an opportunity to for these people to do righteous works. They're actually using this opportunity to confirm their disbelief. You know, they're saying, why doesn't God feed them? It's like, well, look, God could feed everyone, but God is giving you an opportunity to get a loan of righteousness, to do the good works on behalf of God and earn credit for that. You know, the disbeliever, this opportunity is just wasted away, and it just is used to further solidify their disbelief.
I just add on what Peter said. It's absolutely right about the. So basically, what Peter said is, that's what I believe is that. Look, when the Quran is with the Quraysh, they know what all these words are. They know how to pronounce them. They know everything, right? But then when you start taking the Quran to foreign lands, they're not familiar with the Arabic language. They don't know about this dialect. They don't know pronunciation or anything. So that's where you see suddenly they start adding what we call the diacritics, right? So they start adding an endless supply of basically commands, symbols, instructions on how to pronounce everything. And that's where some problems come in variations. And I just put a link to just like, I think over 50 variations between the Warsh edition of the Quran and the Hafs edition. And you will see even some words have alternate meanings and they're changed meanings. And separate from that, a big indication of this is mathematical composition, because the numbering system is just way off. And we were talking about this last week with a group of believers on here. It's just way off. All the numbering system is destroyed. They ruined everything. You know, they changed the number of verses. They counted Bismillah sometimes, didn't count it in others. They altered the sequence of verses. They changed what verse is included with another verse. And so it's very clear that this has been disrupted. And praise God, we have the system that solidifies these issues for us and establishes the truth in regard to what our holy book actually is.
This is one of the I pasted a verse that's like their traditionalists love to go to this verse to say, you know, why to kind of the mathematical miracle is not as significant. So this is Surah 30 verse 2. This is Ghalibat al-Rum, right? The word Ghalibat means that it will be defeated, right? If you said Ghalibat, then that means it was defeated. Or it defeated. So if you say Qul, it means that the Romans are the ones who are being defeated. If you say Qalb, then that means that the Romans are the ones who are doing the defeating or did the defeating. And that's going to change the meaning of the verse. If you look at the different recitations, you'll basically have different interpretations of this one verse. But then for us, in essence, it's like this is one of the beauties too of the having the messenger's translation. It's from the translation we can tell, okay, which one is correct. Because if you believe that God revealed the correct understanding of these verses to the messenger, then that resolves that issue. Otherwise, you know, you're going to have people who are debating, was it the Romans who were defeated, or is this referencing when the Romans did the defeating? And based on that, you're going to have two different interpretations of what the verse is saying.
I would like to add a comment about this as well, because there's a debate with Christians and Muslims or submitters about the many Bibles. We always say, oh, but there's all these versions of Bibles. You got the Catholic version, you got the Protestant version, you got the Jewish version, these things. But they'll come back to you and say, well, look at all the versions of the Quran that there are. And the fact is that is correct. There are many printings, many different dialects, many different things. But the thing that isn't acceptable to people is the notion that there is one of the true ones in there. There's one true one survived. And that the mathematical miracle was the tool by which we recognize that one that survived. And so it is not correct to say that there's only, I mean, it's correct to say there's only one Quran, the real Quran, the real one. Of course, there's only one of those, but it's not correct to say, well, all the Qurans are the same on earth and that kind of a thing. I just wanted to say that.
It's worth adding too. Like this is a real red herring when they say something like that. The vast majority of these are literally differences in pronunciation. And like if you look at tomato and tomato, right? No one's doubting that when someone says that, either they're speaking, British English or American English, the meaning of it is tomato. The vast majority of these variations are things like that, where it doesn't affect the meaning at all. But then when you look at the ones that do, more often than not, is between the two, it doesn't. That's what it is. I'll give you an example. This is Surah 1, verse 4. So you have Maliki Yawmiddin, Master of the Day of Judgment. And you'll see some recitations. And again, 97% of the world uses the Hafs Quran. Navi can correct me if I'm wrong on that, because I think I got it wrong last time. But you'll see some of these other variations where they say Mulk Yawmiddin, which means king of the day of judgment. Now, the difference in meaning between master or king of the day of judgment is very negligible. Yeah, you're going to have some scholars who are going to be debating why one significant is, the significance of one versus the other. For the general population, understanding that either God is the master of the day of judgment or the king of the day of judgment really doesn't affect the meaning. So, despite the fact that there's these variations in dialect, very rarely does it actually impact the interpretation of what it is. And even when it does, again, it's like it's so marginal in the sense where you still, even if you're looking at the wrong pronunciation, the interpretation is still one and the same.
So I have something for Jeff and anyone else that's interested. I'm putting a table here, inshallah. The difference between what they're claiming about the Quran and what actually exists in the Bible is fundamentally different, right? In the Bible, they're wholesale rejecting, based on what sect of Christianity you are, you're wholesale rejecting chunks of the Old Testament and the New Testament. So I'm putting in VC chat 1. So here we have what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. There's about 13 sects of Christianity. Honestly, there's like 40,000 sects. So let's just look at 13 of them. Look at all the books that they're disputing. They don't even agree on. No Muslims are saying, okay, we're going to reject these 15 chapters of the Quran. The variations that we're talking about in the Quran are ridiculously, infinitely minute compared to what we're talking about here. They're talking about entire books that are being thrown out based on your denomination. So it's important to keep this in mind. Like I learned about this where, really, there's just Maccabees, Judith. There's so many books that just were not accepted. And so when you talk to like a Christian and you say, okay, well, you're looking at the Bible, King James Version or whatever, it's really the canonization process provided by the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church is the one that decided these books are going to be there and not be in there. So, they're all just subject to whatever the church has basically indoctrinated in terms of what books are acceptable. That's not the case with Quran. Everyone agrees the Quran is 114 chapters, no dispute about it. Spelling differences and variation of pronunciation do not account for any of these things that we're seeing when it comes to the Bible.
Wanted to share something about the previous topic regarding the time of death. I think, Navid, you pasted 2258 regarding Abraham's courageous debate, where he says, my Lord grants life and death. The king said, I grant life and death. If we look at Quran 259, interesting. So it says, so there's 3 verses that are back to back in lessons of life and death. So 2258 with Abraham's courageous debate, 259, which God willing will read, and then 260, which is Abraham asking God how he revives the dead. But 2259 says, consider the one who passed by the ghost town and wondered, how can God revive this after it died? then put him to death for 100 years, then resurrected him. He said, how long have you stayed here? He said, I've been here a day or part of a day. He said, no, you have been here 100 years. Look at your food and drink. They did not spoil. Look at your donkey. We thus render you a lesson for the people. Now note how we construct the bones, then cover them with flesh. He realized what had happened. He said, now I know that God is omnipotent. This concept that God is the one who dictates life and death, this is the thing that the king failed to recognize. He thinks because he's ordering who's going to live and who's going to die, that he's in control. We see, like, say, the example of the heifer. Killed someone, God basically says, no, that person isn't dead. Sacrifice a heifer. They basically hit a portion of the heifer at the guy, and the guy comes back to life. We have the example of the sleepers of Ephesus. God put them to death for 300 years, and then they basically came back to life. Each night when we go to bed, theoretically, we're dead, and God brings us back to life each morning. And then same thing with this example, that the person went to sleep, but it was actually put to death for 300 years. Anyone who thinks that they're the one who's taken a life or giving life, they fail to understand God's system. Now, this is something else that's really cool. So 2 plus 259 plus 100 years. That is 361, which is equal to 19 times 19. 259, so Surah 2, verse 259, 100 is equal to 118,900 times 19. Then 2, so if you add the digits, 2 plus 5 plus 9 plus 1, and then obviously 0, 0, that's equal to 19 as well.
$59. So this talks about a man and his donkey that are put to death for 100 years. So we're just doing a very quick analysis of this, because a lot of times they say, well, you guys just, this is what Xylura was saying the other day, you guys just pick any way to get to 19. And here we have 3 ways that are very basic, and we get to 19, right? So we get the chapter plus the verse number plus the number of years. So 2 plus 259 plus 100. That's the number of years that he's put to death, right? So we get 361. 19 times 19. Then we just write these same numbers next to each other. So we write 2, 259, 100. Again, we get a multiple of 19. Then we just add the digits of the chapter and verse number. So 2 plus 2 plus 5 plus 9 plus 1 equals 19. What? Well, I didn't get this one. Why did you put 1 on this one, Peter?
The digits.
That's from the 100.
That's from the 100.
But why is it just 1?
It'd be plus 0, 0. This comes out still 19.
Oh, got it. Oh, yeah, because you're just adding the digits. Got it. Okay, wow.
You want to know something else I just noticed? 9 plus 8 is 17, so 118, 900. 9 plus 8 is 17, plus 1 is 18, plus 1 is 19.
9 plus 8? Where did you get
This
that?
number, so it says 2, so this would be 2,259,100
Right.
equals 118,000 times
you
19.
Digits. Yeah, you
Oh,
add those
yeah.
digits in 19. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. So actually, okay, so then this is what it would look like. So you just did this in 3 consistent methodologies and all 3 multiples of 19. That's pretty cool.
Coincidence. It's just funny.
Yeah.
It's like, everyone can always say, hey, it's a coincidence. I was thinking about this. Okay. The aspect is statistically, you say something is unlikely. There's always a small possibility. I was thinking of a term that can be used to show someone, because mathematically you can calculate what is, even if it's 0.0000, at some point, even if there's a marginal possibility, it's theoretically 0. It's hard for people to perceive what it is. If I'm not mistaken, it's like 0.00 above 126. So like have 126 zeros, that's theoretically zero, meaning that there's always going to be some possibility of that outcome. Anything beyond that, for all scientific purposes, we just say the probability is zero. What's the probability? So if you guys are familiar with trading cards, what's the probability of pulling one ace? 1 out of 52, assuming you don't have jokers, right? What's the
Playing
probability?
cards, not trading. Trading cards is Pokemon.
Sorry, yeah, playing cards. What's the probability of 2 aces? It's 2 out of 2. So it'd be 1 out of 52 times 1 out of 52, right? 3 aces, 1 out of 52 times 1 out of 52 times 1 out of 52, right?
Yeah.
4 aces. You continue. But what's the probability of 5 aces?
1 out of 260 or something. I don't know.
There is no 5 aces, right? A deck of cards only has 4 aces. But
Correct.
what's the probability that you just happen to get that one deck that the manufacturer screwed up and made like the 3 of diamonds into another ace? The probability is there, but no one is going to basically be playing a deck, like say a game of poker, and be like, oh, dude, I got 5 aces, and be like, oh, okay, well, statistically it's possible, so yeah, you win this hand. It's like, it's one of those things that you realize, for all intents and purposes, we know when the probability of something is zero. When it comes to these miracles from God, we like to say that, well, there's so many billions of people on this planet and so many millions of interactions that are happening every second. Why should I read into this one? This one book with this one verse that has this phenomenon with the number 19 it's just a coincidence.
Can I just say something crazy about this? So this is going to blow people's minds, and you don't have to believe me if you don't want to. You can look it up. But the fact is that every single deck of playing cards that has been shuffled has had a unique sequence since all of history. You understand what that means? It means if
No.
I take a deck of playing cards and I shuffle them, and then I start looking at them in order, that order is unique. Meaning all the cards that have been shuffled in all of human history, think of all the casinos, the games, people's homes, they've never been shuffled in that order.
Right. Okay. Is that really? I mean, at some point, I feel like you would run out of variations, but
you will be surprised. It's 52 factorial. I can pull it up, inshallah.
Okay.
So if you randomize the deck, the chances of the cards ending up in perfect order, spades, hearts, diamonds, clubs, are 1 in 10 to the power of 68, or 1 followed by 68 zeros. It's a huge number, roughly equal to the number of atoms in our galaxy.
Wow.
Can you believe that? The number of atoms in our galaxy.
Yeah. But people are saying card players reported it happening. Now, is that really true?
Yeah, I don't believe it. Yeah, I don't believe it.
I'm not sure. I don't think so.
It's just statistics, right? So say, for instance, like the Berkeley did a study. This was years ago. I don't know if they've updated since, but the number of atoms in the observable universe is 10 to the 80th. That's like 1 with 80 zeros after it. That's how many atoms are in the universe. The number of possible chess moves in just a simple game of chess, if I'm not mistaken, is like 10 to the 120th. I mean that there's more combinations of chess moves on a simple playing board than there are atoms in the universe. We take for granted that when these coincidences occur, that they're divinely orchestrated. It's one thing to say that it's like, hey, look, this is there's no specificity to it if it's not this outcome. Like you take a random deck of cards, you shuffle them, that outcome, there's no significance to that order. If you happen to shuffle a card and you got it exactly in the exact sequence from 2 all the way to ace in the order of whichever one's the has the highest suit, say, look, there's no way you just randomly shuffled and got that order, right? Because statistically that order has significance. And these are just kind of things that, we see in our lives on a regular basis that a believer is going to see it and be like, okay, this is, divine. The disbeliever is just going to be, it's just a coincidence. What's a big deal?
No, it's not 1 over 52 factorial. It's just 52 factorial. So basically, if you had 108 billion people all shuffling decks at the same time, 1 time per second for 14 billion years, you still wouldn't get enough shufflings to be able to. Go ahead.
Mustafa's right. The probability is 1 out of 52 factorial. The number of combinations is 52 factorial.
Okay.
Any given sequence is 1 out of 52 factorial. Like the probability of shuffling a deck and then getting that specific sequence is 1 out of 52 factorial.
Right. Yeah. MT6 says, why are you guys so obsessed with 19? God is not 19, but 1. Also, your count has flaws.
Okay. MT6, are you familiar with the mathematical structure of the Quran based on the number 19?
A little bit.
So Surah 74 of the Quran is entitled Mudathir. Mudathir is basically, what it means is something that's hidden in plain sight. And we understand that to be that this is the hidden secret, or you can think of it as a form of encryption. So in Surah 74, I believe verse 25, God is talking about the disbeliever. The disbeliever is going to look at this Quran, say that this is clever magic, that this book is man-made. In verse 30 of it, it says, over it is 19. It gives these 5 reasons for the number 19: to disturb the disbelievers, to convince the Christians and Jews that this is divine scripture, to strengthen the faith of the faithful, to remove all trace of doubt from the hearts of Christians, Jews, as well as the believers, to expose those who harbor doubts in their hearts. And there's a lot. I mean, I don't want to go into all the details, but in general, every facet of the Quran is secured by this number 19. So, for instance, the Quran has 114 chapters or surahs. That's 19 times 6. That has 6,346 verses. That's a multiple 19. The number of times that Allah is mentioned in the Quran is 2,698, which is a multiple 19. Yet all the verses where the word Allah occurs is 118,123.
Yeah.
So,
but you don't count Allahumma.
That's the thing. It's a fundamentally different word. Like Allah and Allahumma are 2 completely different words. So yes.
No, not different. It's not different.
You can look at any.
Who made this up? Who is this? Who made this up?
Arabic source.
No.
So wait a minute. This is universally agreed upon. You're the one.
Allahumma, Allah is the same.
It's not. It's not. It's a different root.
Well, I'm not Arab. How do you say, professor? Arabic professor, but I have no, how do you say, high degree of Arabic. But I know that. Well, I will come next time with a better explanation. But for I know is that Allahumma and Allah is the same.
Okay. Well, in this count, it's not treated as the same. So you can think it's the same. That's fine. But in this count, it's not.
Yeah, and also, what else? My understanding of 19 is different. I believe that. It is according to 5:15:9 that it is how do you say, preserved. I agree. But if it is preserved, then why do you guys? How do you say, man?
Was it preserved?
How do you say the last 2
How is it preserved?
of Surah 9?
How is Quran preserved?
Surah Tawbah. Why do you disbelieve in the last 2 verses of chapter 9?
Oh yeah.
No, I asked you a question. How is the Quran preserved?
If it is preserved, why do you not believe in those verses? Not a question.
No, the question is, how is it preserved?
No, just question.
Yeah, I'm asking you.
Contradiction. It's contradiction what you're doing right now.
No. Again, okay, I can pick up 2 Qurans right now, and I can
listen. I'm also a Quran Muslim. Whatever. I don't. Yeah, go on.
Okay, so
Okay, I just feel like you just be patient. Okay, just be patient. He's explaining it to you.
I can pick
After
up 2
50
crons.
minutes, I need to go. I have
Fine.
15 minutes. Here you go.
Okay.
I will be back then later. Yeah.
Okay.
Go on.
But you can pick up any 2 crons today, right? And I'm talking about like Hafs
Yeah.
crons. You will find variations between them. Does that mean that God failed in preserving the Quran?
Here, repeat.
You can pick up any 2 Qurans today, and I'm
Yeah,
talking
yeah,
about
yeah.
Hafs Qurans, right? And you'll find variations between the two. Does that mean that God failed in his promise to preserve the Quran?
No, listen. They only add dots and so on.
Oh,
Haraki
no,
and
no, no.
this
I'm
and
not
that.
talking about dots. I'm not talking
No,
about
it's
dots.
more than dots.
Yeah.
No,
You-
but
are
the
you
Rasm
familiar with
layer
Quran?
is same always.
That's
No,
not
The
true.
Rasm layer.
It's not true. You're saying something you
Really?
don't know about. That's not true.
Oh, I need more research about it.
Please do.
But how many percent it is different? How many percent?
Doesn't
Not
matter.
even
It doesn't
like
matter.
not even 2%.
It doesn't matter if it's even
of the
1%.
Quran.
It doesn't
If
even
it's
matter if
one
it's
word.
one
A
verse.
couple of alifs, couple of that's, and then people say, "Oh, it's changed." Shut up,
No,
man.
but there's the
Bro,
context
doesn't-
God says that he preserved the Quran, and I'm showing you. Look, I can show you. Pick up any 2 Qurans, you'll find variations. And what does that mean that God preserved the Quran? Did God fail?
yeah. I don't care, bro. I don't care
Okay,
about
my
variants.
advice to
Why are
you,
you here?
my advice to you is just calm
Why?
down.
Listen, you guys don't even believe in flat Earth because the Quran is clear about that. So I don't respect you guys. Listen,
Alright.
you Rashad Khalifa. Okay, I came from 19. I was
Okay,
Eddie
how
Pixel
can we help
fanboy.
you? Okay, hold on.
I was a fanboy of
Hold on a
Eddie
second.
Pixel as a
Hold on a
Turkish guy,
second. Hold on a
but I will
second.
never be back again.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Excuse me.
Yeah.
How can I help you? How can
Well,
I help
I'm
you?
just a listener. I'm just a listener. I came here.
No, you're
to listen.
not, because you're not here to learn. You already made up your mind.
I will teach you. I'm a teacher.
What?
I'm a teacher.
You're a teacher. You're here to teach
Yeah,
us?
bro. Well, God didn't teach you. At least let me teach, because the
Okay.
verses are clear, but you
Okay, so
reject
do
the
you
Quran.
have? Yeah, so you believe the
You
earth is
haven't even
flat.
studied any of this, but you
Well,
tell me with
if
confidence.
if your book, the Quran, is saying that, yes, I believe it.
Isn't that funny? I mean, you
With
haven't
proofs,
studied
with
any of
real evidence too, like in
You
real
haven't
life.
studied any of this. Like we're presenting
So
stuff to you that you've never heard of, and yet you have such confidence that you're
so
right. Where does this come from? Where does this confidence come from? I
19ers
would
don't
love
make
to,
sense, bro.
I would love to have that level of confidence to
Rashid
be able to
Khalifa.
think of things that I don't know about with such
Oh my
absolute
God.
certainty.
Okay, if you say, oh my God, 10 times, you keep saying Rashad Khalifa, that doesn't strengthen your argument.
Also, how to pray? You cannot show us how to pray
You
correctly.
really? Yeah, I'm showing you right now.
You believe
But
it
the
5
problem
times,
is you
right?
don't want to learn.
5
You
times.
don't want to learn.
5 times, right?
Yeah.
That's
You
what
don't
he
want
said.
to learn. Yeah, you don't want to learn. Do you want to
That's
learn or do you not
also
want to learn?
incorrect too. It's 3 times.
Okay.
Again,
MT6.
constantly
All right.
incorrect. Constantly,
All right.
Rashad.
MT6, there's a comment.
Another
put
thing
down.
is that he's saying Allah and Satan is
Robert
same
was
in
talking.
same
MC6.
mulk.
Hold on a
MC6.
second.
Robert was
Hold on
talking.
a second.
I'm just
He
wondering.
associate Allah with Satan. This guy, Rashad.
Hey, MT6, if Yahya says that the egg, according to Quran, in 7930, he made the earth egg-shaped. What do you think about
It's
that?
not egg shaped. It is
egg-shaped.
the nest
Do you
of
believe
the
it's flat? Do you believe it's
It is
it is
flat?
the
egg-shaped.
nest. It is the nest of the ostrich. It is not
Do you believe it's flat?
the ostrich or the egg itself.
T6, do you believe the earth is flat?
Yes, of course.
Of course.
Was
Yeah,
fr-
okay.
Yeah,
thank
of
you.
course. Yeah, of course. I should reread the Quran again. And
Maybe you should
research,
take a plane
reread
ride.
again. Because there are tons of verses about that. Like chapter 2, 22. In Ghashiyah 20, for example. Literally.
You ever been on a plane?
Sutihat.
Have you been on a plane?
Yana. No.
You've been on a plane.
No, do you trust Allah?
Have you been on
My
a plane?
question. No, do you trust Allah first?
You've been on a plane.
Not my question.
Have you ever
No,
been on a plane?
No. Do you trust God?
Have
Yes
you-
or no? No, don't go there. No, don't go there.
I mean, seriously,
Well,
why
of
have you been
course,
on
you
a
need to
plane?
have proof. Of course, I agree. You need to have
No,
confirmation
have you
in
been on a
real
plane?
in the real world, of course. And it
Why don't
is,
you
yeah.
just go on a
I
plane?
did go to. I was in a plane. It's flat, man. I
So
can
you've
see.
been on a plane and you
There are a
witnessed that
lot
the
of
Earth is flat.
laser. There are a lot of laser tests. You know, miles far away. We can see 200, 300 kilometers far away buildings and mountains.
Such a
And you
blessing to have
claim
someone go on
me,
this
you
planet.
say to me that the Earth is a globe, which is made by fake by NASA and all that shit. So, but I have no time. I will go soon.
Please don't come back.
I will come back, maybe.
Okay.
This is funny. Yeah, I will come back.
Hey, but I just want you to know that if you're going to continue in the way you're continuing, you're going to get banned.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
I
because
don't care,
trolling
you know?
is not allowed here. Okay, well, I'm just telling you, you're
Interesting.
going to get
Come back
banned. Trolling is not allowed. If you're here to talk or debate or discuss, it's fine. But if you're just coming here to just takfir or just spew nonsense, that's not going to be acceptable.
So funny. Okay, man.
Yeah, it is funny.
I need to go.
Yo, peace.
All right.
Peace.
So, just for the record, he left. Just for the record, the earth is round, and the Quran tells us it's round. And actually, Peter put a really good article here that confirms the Quran tells us the earth is round.
Word al-ardi for earth in Arabic literally means round.
So
So you roll the night over the day.
yeah, and the shape of the earth is egg-shaped, and it's a spheroid. It's called an ellipsoid oblate spheroid, which is basically what it is an egg shape. That means it's not perfectly round.
That's the thing. It's specifically da is in the reference to an ostrich egg, and he is right where it says it's the nest, but it's not just the nest; it's the spreading. In essence, you spread the ground, put a egg in there, and if you look at the article, the shape of an ostrich egg out of all the eggs is the most similar to the obloid spheroid. Then, in addition to that, what's fascinating is if you take a cross section of the planet Earth and you take a cross section of an egg, the similarities there are uncanny. So God, in essence, in this one expression, is explaining not just the physical shape of the Earth, but actually how the crust of the Earth, the molten iron core of the center of the Earth, the parallels between that and an egg, but then also the concept of plate tectonics, where on the mantle of the Earth you have these 7 plates that where they collide, or where you have the formations of volcanoes and mountains. And again, from this one simple verse, from these one simple
Yeah.
word that God uses for mountains as stabilizers, as pegs, it's
So-
explaining all these concepts to us.
But can I just say something about this? The issue is not even the shape of the earth. We have these people, these Quranists, they come in here, they're extremely confident. They say, look, we have it all figured out. You guys are just confused. They claim to understand every single verse in the Quran, and they're not even willing to hear anything. And I just put a podcast on this. It's called, what is it, Religious Hedonism. I really recommend everyone to save this for later and listen to it. It's really awesome. And it talks about this concept. And, when our ego takes hold of us, we reach a point where we just feel like we have the absolute truth and no one else can be right. But God says in the Quran that the true believers are those who examine all words and follow the best. We should fear the day when we are not willing to examine any evidence and we are certain that there's no way we can be wrong. The Messenger of Covenant teaches about this, that look, you should put yourself on trial as often as possible, maybe every day. Put your beliefs to the test, question them. You shouldn't just assume that you're wrong. When you do that, you fall into a trap, because then your works get adorned in your eyes, and you just assume you cannot be wrong. You cannot do anything, have any wrong understanding. When you reach that point, then effectively you've been sealed. Your mind is blocked. Where this guy shows up here and he says, look, there's 30 of you here or whatever, 20 of you. The earth is flat, and any of you who think otherwise are idiots. And then we challenge him. He says, well, God, this is what God says. If you don't accept this, then you're rejecting God. That's the level of arrogance here. It comes from ego.
Okay, I want to ask something controversial now. So what if you get to that point, Naveed, but you be like the verse you were quoting, to follow the best of interpretations, right? Or the best thereof? Listen,
Yeah, they
okay.
listen to all words and then follow the best. I think it's a
What
49.
if, let's say you have one opinion of Rashad, and then we examine that, and then we find a better opinion? Can you then say, well, I'm reverting to what Rashad said? Or are you going to say, let's follow this opinion?
Yeah, I think that it's different when, for me, I believe Rashad was a messenger. I believe I don't put my opinion above his. And he makes clear explicitly on many topics that he's been commissioned to come explain these matters for me. So it's really tempting to just say, well, he was wrong on these 5 issues or 10 issues or 20 issues. But what I'm saying is, if you open that door, it's a Pandora's box. It's a rabbit hole. Where does it lead to? Because ultimately, if once you break that open, you basically make a hole in the dam, then ultimately the floodgates are open. So my question is, where does it end? And this is the issue that we've had with these hybrid submitter / Quranists. They don't have any threshold for it. It's just everyone is self-identifying however they want in this regard. And so there is no unanimous understanding. Anyone just like to somebody, what Rashad says, it sounds logical. They say, yes, this is from God. To another person, they say this is not logical, so it's definitely false. And if we're saying everything's up for debate, then what are we left with? We're really left with nothing at that point. I think it's a very dangerous path.
The aspect, I mean, everyone's free to do and believe whatever it is that they want. The hostility is the aspect that it's like, we're not gonna tolerate. If someone wants to come and say, hey, you know what, I think the Earth is flat and this is my reason, it's like, okay, that's interesting. But when they're coming and being kind of belligerent, I think that's the threshold that we judge the behavior. Regarding that aspect, it's like, Robert, to your question, I bring up this example a lot, but to me it makes the most sense. It's kind of like a parallel or a metaphor for understanding how to treat the work from Rashad as a messenger. Is, God commissioned Noah to build an ark and revealed to Noah what it is he is to build. To the best of his ability, he went and got the wood and got the rope and spun it together and constructed what it is that God inspired him. Now we can go and look at that ark and be like, dude, no, why'd you do it that way? Like, why'd you lay the planks this? Why'd you use that kind of wood? Why did you spin the ropes this manner? Wouldn't it be better if we do it this other way? At the end of the day, it really doesn't matter, because that ark that Noah was commissioned to make, irrespective of how he built it or how it could potentially be improved, God guaranteed that if you get on that ark, you will be saved. Now, we can go and build on top of kind of what Rashad was commissioned to deliver. If we go to the point of saying, you know what, I'm just going to go and construct my own ark and build my own ship, and I'm going to pick and choose the components that I want to take from Rashad and the components I want to take from traditionalists and from Adib and whoever else is out there. The reality is no other ark is going to have that guarantee. So, I'm always apprehensive of coming up with some interpretation or understanding or, changing one of these like rituals, be it the Salat, the Zakat, the Ramadan fasting, from what was delivered to us. Because at that point, I'd be indicating that, okay, God's messenger didn't know how to do Salat. Like, oh, God gave him all this knowledge, but got to tell him that Salat's actually 3 times a day, and not 5.
Mm.
The absurdity of that is just like, at that point, why even accept this person as a messenger? And the reality is we always glorify and hold the previous messengers at such high esteem. But the reality is, even those, Jesus, Moses, Muhammad, when they came, the majority of people doubted them, were unsure. They were thinking about the good old days of Moses and Jesus when Muhammad came. When Jesus came, they're thinking about the good old days when Moses and Aaron were there. Aspect is like, it's because we see them as humans, and we see their inherent shortcomings, and they don't walk around with a halo on their head, that it's easy for us to just dismiss. But the mechanism never changes. God chose this individual, revealed this information to them. It's up to us if we choose to believe it or not.
I just put a image from the submitter's perspective from Rashad. He says that God has charged him to announce the correct way for uttering the Shahada. So anyone who says that Shahada is La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah, that has to be wrong. And also he says the correct way for observing the 5 daily contact prayers, the correct way of Salat, Zakat, and many other things. And so I guess a new thing that I've been hearing to try to get out of this, it's saying he's a messenger of Satan. They say, well, he was just really deluded. Delusion is different than being a messenger of Satan. He didn't have any bad intentions. He was just delusional. That's how they try to get around it and say, well, he wasn't legit, like just a messenger of Satan.
I'm
May
wondering
I?
if, yeah,
Oh, no, Robert.
really? Okay, really quick. No, you go first. You go first, honestly. Yeah.
All right. I think I've made this point before, but you can see just from history, you look at Islam and how shortly after Muhammad died, we had Shiism, we had the different understandings coming from the Sunnis, and then by the time 200 years later, you had all the Hadith injected into it. You see that we believe within 19 or 38 years of the Quran being revealed, that those 2 satanic verses were injected. But nonetheless, we can at least agree on the point that after the messenger dies, we see injection and distortion occur. And I don't stop there. I have spent a lot of time looking at the early Christianities, and I'm saying plural, because the explosion of the variety of Christianities that came upon the world after Jesus died is actually incredible. And it's something that we've been discovering since the archaeological discoveries and the surfacing of texts from whether it's Nag Hammadi, the Dead Sea Scrolls, and just from unearthings of graves, that there were so many Christianities. Paul, for example, the dominant one, what they're saying within 5 years is when he was starting to preach his version, and you have all of the Gnostics. That's a whole vein. You have the Ebionites, who was more like the Book of James and some of those things that were more like the Jews. So there's a vast variety of Christianities. But what is, to me, just impresses upon me, the biggest statement is that When a messenger dies, the message gets distorted. So therefore, that tells me that now, okay, I believe a messenger has come to us. What is going to happen after he dies? And I think, well, history tells me that message will get distorted in one way or another, and there will be very many different versions of it. So therefore, that tells me that if I'm smart, I'll try to stick to what the original opinion, message, expressions of that messenger was, and to refrain from my own extrapolations.
Sure. Guys, I gotta bounce, but great study. God willing, try to get on later.
All right, man. See you, Peter. Peace.
Well, I just want to make a request for everyone here. When we make the new event, inshallah, can everyone tap interested, please? So that way it bumps it up. We'll make it soon, inshallah, if it's not made already. Yeah, if you
What
just
do you
tap.
mean by bumps it up? What is this phrase? What does it mean? Could you explain that?
Well, it hypes up the event, you know? It comes up and they see, 20 people, 30 people are, registered for this event, the Quran study. It adds, increases its, just the attention it gets, I guess. And this is a really big deal because I've been on servers with 10,000 members, 40,000 members, and they only get 2 or 3 people tapping interested in their events. So this is a huge deal.
Oh, okay. So it's kind of like in like a comparison would be like for YouTube creators, they like people to subscribe or to like, and that bumps them up. Is that the kind of thing
I
you're
kind
saying?
of. I guess it's different than that. They have like specific algorithms. I don't know how similar it is, but it's kind of a similar concept, I guess. We're getting pretty close. I mean, if anyone's here, they can invite your friends. We're at 439. If we reach 500 members, we can become Discord partner, inshallah. And it'll really establish us. We get the official logo and we get all the perks. It's a really big deal. So we just need 61 more members, inshallah, and we can become Discord partners. So that's a huge deal. But yeah, if you feel free to invite any of your friends or submitters or anyone interested in religion or just discussion or anything. Really, it's really open. So yeah. Any other questions? Does anyone here have any questions?